Now, for the first week and then moving on into week 2 and week 3, we really want to have a big focus on doing this 100%, especially for those first 7 days. If you're going to commit for those first 7 days. And then if you really, really have to bring things back in, do it on week 2 and week 3. But you want to start this program not in a place where you're going to be ridiculously busy on the first day. You want to have time to prepare. So where a lot of people start their health journeys on a Monday, you might want to start this at the weekend where you have a little bit more time potentially. Just a word of advice with that. Now we are going to look at cutting out certain types of foods. And then we're going to look at what we actually add in. Now those foods are going to be processed sugar that we're going to look to take out. We're going to look at a lot of processed snacks with flour and wheat included in them and gluten. We're going to look at inflammatory signaling foods. And then next week, we get into the caffeine and alcohol side of things. I want you to really see the improvements before we then look at the things which a lot of people struggle a bit more with cutting out, the caffeine and alcohol side of things. There's a bit more of a reliance on them with the stress that we have in our body. So if we can start a little bit of improvements, get those moving forward, then we can then pull those ones out slowly once again. Then we look at adding in low glycemic index fruits. I've already mentioned the berries earlier in this course. And we look at melons and things like that. We look at adding those in small quantities. Again, we don't want to spike those blood sugar levels. We look at adding those in. We look at how much vegetables you should actually be eating. And we look at what we can do to improve the quality of our water. Now, processed sugar. There seems to be a processed sugar problem all around the world where every single place we look, there is processed sugar, not even called sugar. So when we have the sugar in our body, it does a lot of different things and signals certain things. Yes, we need glucose for fuel. Our brain primarily fuels off of glucose, which is sugar. But the more processing it's had, the less natural it is. And the more we have, the more problems we have from it. Now, there's a massive link between sugar and brain issues with not getting the right sugar in there, getting too much, getting too little, and not be able to manage it throughout the day. So we do want to look at cutting sugar out. Now, this is going to come in the form of sugar, which could be glucose, fructose, lactose, anything really with an O's on the end of it. Look at these on the ingredients lists of certain foods. Then we get into artificial sweeteners. And I was reading a study the other day talking about the gut microbiome, our gut health and artificial sweeteners. Now, the one that's always demonized a lot is aspartame. And it actually came through in the study, which it had little impact on the gut in small doses in small periods of time. And that is a lot like a lot of these things. The danger is in the dose, especially when it comes to things like natural sweeteners or sweeteners. So aspartame is something which I have Diet Cokes, but I don't overload on Diet Cokes. I make sure I cut the sucralose as a sweetener out. And one of the biggest sweeteners, which I really, really would say, if you're going to use sweeteners and you need sweeteners in your coffee and your food and your teas and all these sorts of things, then plant-based sweeteners like stevia or Truvia, Whole Earth do a version of stevia. Having a look at those are going to be very, very beneficial. But cut the things like saccharin, sucralose, acesulfame, potassium even. They're the things that we want to cut out. Things like high fructose corn syrup is also going to be something which we want to look at. Now, this is going to be in a lot of things, and you need to check the labels of the foods that you're having. It is very, very addictive within the body, and it makes us want more. And I don't know if they still do it now, but there are a lot of fast food restaurants that used to coat their burger buns in high fructose corn syrup because it made us want to have more and more. It was a marketing side of things. So look at the labels. Dextrin and maltodextrin. We want to cut those out. Again, they're going to cause big blood sugar spikes. And also, unfortunately, even natural honey, we want to be cutting out, especially for these first 3 weeks. Remember, do 100% on the first week. If you can on 2 and 3, do it 100% as well. But do your best to cut these out for those 21 days and then start adding them back in. And what I would recommend is that when you add these things back in, Don't just chuck them all in at once. Put one in every couple of days. See what the reaction is to your body. And then you can then build up from there. Then we go into like, what sweet swaps can we have? Because the long and short of it is that if you're balancing your blood sugar levels and your brain is functioning better and we get rid of that brain fog, your cravings will actually die down. And I know it seems hard to believe right now, but you may not even want that dessert. And that's where the decision actually comes. I used to have a massive sweet tooth. Now I'm more of a starters or an appetizers kind of guy, depending on what side of the pond you're on. And I'd prefer that and more protein and fat based. I don't really worry about the sweets. I don't really worry about the dessert. So have a look at, are you wanting these foods or are you needing these foods? Because if you're craving them, again, we balance blood sugar, then you're going to be in a much better place and have much more power over your body. So switch the processed fruit syrup. The things that the real fruit that you find in a lot of yogurts is usually made up of sweeteners, and we don't want to have that fruit syrup in there. And it may have some of the actual fruit in it, but you're better to get plain yogurts or low-fat Greek yogurts and add some of the blueberries or some stevia-based sweetener in there. Then again, things like, we always see smoothies to be this healthy thing, but there's a lot of added sugar or processed sugar, or fruits have been juiced and we've taken the fiber out of them and they're going to cause much more of a spike in GI. Now, again, veg smoothies are part of that 4-pillar foundation that we spoke about. So getting some protein powder, having some veggies, a little bit of blueberries, some fats in there, maybe some oil, maybe some nut butter. They're going to be a very good thing to have first thing in the morning if you haven't got time to prepare your whole breakfast or anything like that. And we'll be talking about a special ingredient that I have for your gut health a little bit later in this program, which you're going to want to chuck in there. I should work on a better name, but it's a veggie ice cube, which is kind of a veg sludge, but a veggie ice cube. And we want to look at sweet swaps as well. Protein bars without loads of artificial sweeteners. They're harder to find, but once you do find one that you actually like, it can be a game changer. Now, most of these protein bars are a glorified chocolate bar. You can get some flavors of Quest without loads of artificial sweeteners. Things like Grenade here in the UK. There are loads of different protein bars now, but have a look at the ingredients. Find one with a good amount of protein, about 15 grams or so of protein, and maybe a little bit more. Find one that isn't just laced with loads of sugar. And that can be your friend when you do potentially have that sweet craving. And another thing to look at with sweet cravings, is it hydration? Is it because you're fatigued? Now, a big thing we cut out here is going to be processed snacks, wheat, flour, corn chips, these sorts of things. They're going to send your blood sugar levels literally skyrocketing through the roof. And that will then potentially cause a roller coaster of up and downs throughout the days. We have this high blood sugar, then it goes low. Then our brain needs sugar to fuel. So cortisol gets boosted, and it's going to impact our hormones, and it's going to impact our sleep, and it's going to impact our brain function massively. So we want to cut them down, and we want to make sure that it isn't to say we're going to cut them out for good. But again, just like the other stuff, focus on doing this for the 21 days. And a big thing that I know myself I react to is gluten. Now, not everyone reacts to gluten. I am not celiac. I've done tests to say that I am not celiac. Therefore, a doctor will tell me as I am okay with gluten. And it's one of my frustrations in the Western medicine side of the world. And the reason for that is because if you are celiac, chances are gluten is reacting to something within your body which are called transglutaminases, and transglutaminase 2s specifically. They're all different numbers of it. But gluten can also react to other transglutaminases. And the celiac test only tests for TG2. We also know that gluten reacts to TG3s, which are found within the skin, and TG6, which is found within the central nervous system and massively linked to neurological issues, brain fog, migraines, headaches, not being able to sleep. But unless you get a specific test, which isn't usually available under insurance or over here on the NHS, you cannot test for these. So be aware of these things. Do you constantly get brain fog and migraines and headaches and all these different things when you have this food? We may have to actually cut gluten out for 4 to 6 weeks to actually notice the difference. Maybe you're bloating or something like that. So we're going to cut gluten out in these 21 days, see what the difference is. Most people will see a difference if there is going to be a difference with gluten in these 21 days. And if it isn't gluten, you will definitely get better balanced blood sugar levels and you will improve your brain fog as a result. So we're going to look at all flour containing foods. Make sure you check the labels. We're going to look at all bread for now, even low carb bread substitutes or anything like that. We're going to look at pasta and pasta alternatives. Unless there's a brand over here called Bare Naked Foods. Now, the guy that runs it, full disclosure, he's a friend of mine, and he was on Dragon's Den launching his brand years and years ago. It must have been 2013 or something like that. And it's been really successful. And this is a brand of noodles, of rice, of spaghetti, which is made from a thing called cognac flour. Now, there are other brands that do it as well, but have a look and see what you can find. It's very high in fiber, so don't have too much. When I was prepping for my last show, like I was having too much and it very much did stuff me up. But have a look to see what you can do just so we can get that texture. You can also use things if you do want pasta alternatives like zucchini, zoodles, or butternut squash noodles. There are so many different potential options which will help you get fiber in as well. Crisps, tortilla chips. These are things we're going to be looking at cutting out. I'm going to send your blood sugar levels through the roof. Soy as well. And soy containing food. Now, soy isn't inherently bad, and it isn't as bad as what people make out, but it could absolutely be impacting your hormones. And if it's impacting your hormones, it could be impacting your brain function. It could be massively adding to the brain fog you're suffering. When we also look for gluten, as I say, we're cutting gluten out. When we look for gluten, we want to look on the labels for things like gluten. It's going to say it's going to be in bold, wheat, flour, oat gluten, malt vinegar, barley, rye, and it can even come as a cross-contamination with instant coffee. Some wines, some red wines that are actually stored in barrels that are covered in wheat paste. Corn as well. These can cross-react within the body if you are super, super sensitive. So just bear that in mind as well. Flour swaps and snacks. Again, when you're working without brain fog, snacks aren't needed as much. We think we need snacks, but sometimes it's just down to habit. Sometimes it's just down to boredom. Sometimes it's down to hydration. We don't want to have these high carb laden snacks. And we want to make sure that, especially for those 21 days, we do cut those out. And we have them on a bare minimum process afterwards. Now, things you can have are things like bread-free pizza. Now, you can get cauliflower-based pizza. Again, check the label for hidden roadblocks to your success, because a lot of them say cauliflower-based, but then aren't actually cauliflower-based. Those noodles that I mentioned, the Bare Naked noodles, chopping up things like vegetables and have them with hummus, or having some peanut butter on celery or apple with celery. Things like kale chips, again, check the ingredients if they're pre-prepared, because a lot of them can have a lot of added extras. And romaine lettuce is your friend if you really, really need bread-like texture or need the experience. A lot of restaurants will do lettuce wraps when it comes to putting the burger, so you can actually hold it and have that experience of eating a burger. A lot of people, that's what they miss. So they're things you can add in. And then what we're also going to do, especially for the first 7 days, is have one serving of good, healthy fish per day, especially for the first 7 days. And afterwards, a couple of times a week should be pretty sufficient, because we're going to get good fatty acids in here. We're going to get good omega-3s, good levels of EPAs and DHAs, which again are the fatty acids that we need. And DHAs especially have been linked massively to brain function. So if you get things like salmon, you get things like tuna, like mackerel, like oysters, prawns or shrimps, trout, haddock. These are things that are absolutely going to help you. And then we can add other fats in from walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, Brazil nuts. olive oil, so many different things, options, avocados in there. We can get good levels of fats throughout our diet, and we can get good variation on those fats throughout our diet. And again, if you bloat when you have fats, we need to look at gallbladder function. We need to look at gut health. Maybe we should have a conversation, drop me a message, and we can talk about that individually. We're not going to be going through that in depth in this course. Vegetables and fruits. We want to get, that magic number of 5? We want 7 to 8 servings of fruit and veg a day, pushing towards vegetables to be your friend here. And we're going to get different colors in. And then we go into low GI berries, things like low GI fruits, things like the berries, things like watermelon. One very small serving. It might only be like 20, 25 grams that you have per day in the first week. Get the variety from various fibrous vegetables. And as I mentioned earlier, veg ice cubes are your friends. This is probably going to take a lot of work, but once you've done it, you're going to be sorted for the 21 days. So a task that we do is get about 20 different vegetables that you wouldn't normally have, or some that you would normally have. Just go around the store, pick up different vegetables. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to chop a little bit. It might be a little bit of carrot, might be a little bit of eggplant, it might be a little bit of zucchini, a little bit of parsnips, put some okra in there, some bok choy, things, some garlic, like things that you wouldn't normally have or eat. Sometimes you just put them in there. And you get a whole food processor full and just blitz it. Then you're going to get that mixture. This food is all raw, not cooked. It's raw. You're going to put 2 tablespoons or so into big ice cubes. You could put it in flat pack freezer packs if you want to, but ice cubes are just super easy. And then from there, when you have your smoothie in the morning or when you have a protein shake, get one of those ice cubes out and blitz it in a blender. That is going to help you with a lot of diversification within your gut microbiome. It's a veg sludge. It's a veg ice cube. You can't taste the individual veggies. It's very much worth adding that in. And I have it pretty much every day. I'm never going to say I do something every day because I'm not perfect. I am a human being. I might do it 4, 5, 6 days a week. Sometimes I'll do it 7 days. But it's good to have it regularly in there. And the last thing we're going to look at when it comes to getting the right amounts in is water. We want to have a good couple of liters of water a day. I have a Berkey water filter. It's not the most attractive thing, but it filters the water and gets a lot of the rubbish out, much better than things like a Brita water filter. If you've got a Brita water filter, it's better than tap water. But ideally, we don't have tap water and we don't store it in hot times or in hot places with plastic as well. And make sure any containers you have are BPA free as well, because a lot of people will react to this, and that can be something, if you are highly reactive, it causes brain fog. So get a couple of liters of water, 2 or 3 liters of water a day. Try and taper it off a little bit before bed, just so it isn't that's waking you up. And add a pinch of pink Himalayan rock salt. You can get hydration drops, and we'll talk about that in the supplement side of things. I use a brand called Energetics, Rehydration and Spectrum In. Every time I have a pint of water, I pop some of that in there. Most of the times I have a pint of water, I put it in there and I travel with it as well. But add a pinch of pink Himalayan rock salt, because that also will give you a high mineral level content. And it will just add to the effectiveness of that water. That's not to say you should taste it. Only a small pinch every time you put it in there. If you can taste it, it's probably a bit too much. But hopefully that's given you an idea. And it's quite a long video, this one of the longest that is going to be in this course. But with the PDFs that are going to go through these in a list, you should be able to get a good idea of what foods are taken out, what foods we're putting in, and be able to plan your food ahead for the next 7 days, 14 days, and 21 days. Try not to switch too much. Just simply, if it feels overwhelming, switch a few, then some more. And even though this is a 21-day brain fog blitz, if you need to do it over a month, if you need to do it over 2 months, take your time and ease yourself into it.